Okay, Jason, we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Alright. So, before we do anything else, I need to tell you the essential question and my answer for it. So, the essential question is, what is the role of media in our society, and how can we become responsible producers and consumers of news and information in the digital age? For my answer, the purpose of media is to communicate a message to the viewer, or to lead them to form some sort of opinion. Media always has some sort of intention behind it, or at least it should, and every little thing counts. One wrong move can lead to your message being distorted in a way you would never have been able to imagine. Communicating a message with unclear intentions will lead to unintended consequences. So if you somehow, theoretically, manage to screw up enough times on a large enough scale, if you wrote your piece of media so poorly that it barely counts as trying to communicate the original message anymore, it could end horribly wrong. Now that that's out of the way, I'd like to tell you a story. A story about glory, perseverance, and most importantly, horny preteen girls on Tumblr. This is the story of the Onceler Fandom. Let me explain. So, once upon a time, in the ancient year of 2012, the Lorax movie, produced by DreamWorks Studios, was released. It's a movie adaptation of the book by the same name. The thing that brought so much attention was a character named the Onceler. Yeah, the faceless guy from the book, the one who's only showed a pair of hands and sometimes eyes. In 2012 movie adaptation, they gave this character new backstory. And with these changes, the Onceler became a much more full and complete character. In fact, they gave him a face. Instead of some boring, unsympathetic pair of hands, they made him into a twink, a tall, skinny white boy. And after his invention turns out to be a success, he has a musical transformation in his token song, How Bad Can I Be? He becomes rich, famous, and gets a cool new outfit. Look at him, he's got a top hat. So, if you're not familiar with Tumblr itself, it is a social media website primarily known for being a cesspool of early fandom and fan culture. It had its peak around late 2011 to 2014, and the Lorax was released at just the right time to have it accidentally explode. From fan art to GIF sets to edits, content for this one guy was made until it dried out. And not just in some tiny friend group either. Thousands, and yes I mean thousands of people gathered in their appreciation for this beanpole. And they quickly ran out of ideas. It's a children's movie, you can only obsess over it so much before you get bored. The obvious answer to this would just be to stop and let the fan base dissolve on its own, but they wouldn't be defeated that easily. Instead, they decided to kill two birds with one stone. Another problem with the Lorax is that there's no one to ship or imagine this character in a relationship with. You could theoretically take the Lorax himself and pair him with the Onceler, but few are brave enough to do so. Thank God for that, my search results were already bad enough. So, remember how I said that the Onceler went through an outfit and personality change? Yeah, well, it was drastic enough that they collectively decided the best course of action would be to ship him with himself. They called it oncest. I'm going to give you a moment to process all of that. They took the two versions of the Onceler, the one before song transformation and the one from after, and put them in a relationship together. He needed to kiss someone, and the dynamic of soft uwu boy plus mean evil angry boy is something that people tend to like. It was a match made in hell. So, something else that also happens to be common is making AUs or alternate universes in fandom. That's pretty much putting the story through an what-if machine and making a new alternate storyline, even if it is not remotely related to the source. So, since some of the users eventually got bored of classic oncest, they started shipping the alternate universe versions of the Onceler together. Keep in mind that these are all still the same guy. These blogs quickly went off the rails. There is an incomplete list on fandom Wikipedia of all known Onceler Ask blogs, a specific type of Tumblr blog. Even that mess has hundreds of entries. So, the fanbase fizzled out eventually, but it took a long time before they truly went extinct. The few months at which the community was at its peak is something something regarded as one of the most largest and wild events of Tumblr history. So, I'm sure you have questions. Trust me, I did too. But what I'm here to do today isn't just pointing and laughing at girls liking something, because how dare they. My goal today, in true media literacy fashion, is to ask why. That is not the right key. What just happened?
Oh, you got escape.
I got it. Okay, hold on. Woo! Alright, resume. My goal is to ask why. Not why do girls like this, because that'd be an entirely different exhibition. My question is, why and how did the Lorax movie mess up that badly? I want to know why this movie prompted the reaction it received. Aggressive page turning.
Help me.
So just keep all this Tumblr stuff in the back of your mind throughout the next portion of the exhibition. I'll tie it all back together later. So let's start at the beginning. The original book starts with a boy wandering into a cold landscape. No context is given as to why the boy is there because it's simply not necessary. The movie, however, starts in Thneedville, a town with blissfully ignorant citizens closed off from the world by ginormous walls. The town is controlled by Alicious O'Hare, a zillionaire who sells the citizens fresh air and has cameras all over town to make sure no one leaves. None of this stuff is even hinted at in the books. But I know that thanks to the change from short book to long movie, they inherently need to change a few things, so I'll cut them some slack for now, sure. But we're drawing the line. So, our main character is Ted Wiggins, a 12-year-old boy who happily lives in Thneedville with his family and friends. So, Ted is the protagonist of the story. So in order for the viewer, who in this case is intended to be children, to relate to the story, they have to relate to the protagonist. Ted has a lot of generic young boy traits, like riding a motorbike, which is every young boy's life goal at that age. He also can't have any extreme beliefs, because that would exclude quite a few viewers. So, the reason he's interested in trees is because of his crush, Audrey. She's not like other girls. She loves trees and wants to see a real tree someday, telling Ted that if someone got her a real tree, she would marry them on the spot. Ted springs at this opportunity and immediately goes to ask his family about trees. They react like this, showing how the town as a whole views trees. Upload these to YouTube.
Mom, do you happen to know if there's like any place where I could get a real tree?
Ted, we already have a tree. It's the latest model.
Yeah, but I mean like a real one that grows out of the ground or whatever, you know, like a real tree.
Really? You'd rather have some dirty, messy lump of wood that just sticks out of the ground and it does what? I don't even know what it does. What's its purpose? Look at what we've got. It's the Oak-O-Matic, the only tree with its own remote. Summer, autumn, winter, and disco.
Mom.
Come on, Ted, get into it. Dance with the tree.
Oh, it hurts, Mom. Please stop.
Alright, so. Hold on. Let me try and figure out how to exit this mess. Back to our exhibition. Ted's grandma, in contrast to the mom, thinks differently. She tells Ted about the Onceler, a man outside of town who knows what happens to the trees. Ted ventures outside of Thneedville, finally seeing the welcoming cold colors from the book. So does this mean we'll finally get closer to the original plot of the Lorax? No, but we'll continue on. So here's where we get into the highlight of our show. The Onceler tells a flashback type story about what happened to the trees. So in the book, all we learn about him is that the truffle trees are what he's been searching for. We don't really get any more information than that because he just finds them and then gets to trapping. In contrast, the Onceler in the movie is a little bit more complicated. For the movie, they need to give him motivations and make him a real person. The Onceler's family is disappointed in him because he has not accomplished anything in life. They mock and ridicule him for his brilliant invention, the Thneed, saying things like, if your invention somehow ends up a failure instead of a success, oh, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Aggressive page turning. He goes on a journey to find something to make his Thneed with, desperate to prove his mean family wrong. Does any of this sound like the book?
Yeah.
It doesn't. The Onceler starts as a soft boy with a Thneed, a guitar, and a dream. And, okay, it's important to keep in mind that DreamWorks Studios is trying to make a children's movie that has to be as neutral as possible to make the most profit. Need both bright colors and rhyming words to appeal to the kids, and a message easy to agree with for the parents. So, eventually, the Onceler finds the truffle trees, the perfect material for his Thneed. The animals who live there welcome him with open arms, but they cower away once he cuts down a tree. The Lorax tells him to stop. So, now it's time for... Sorry. While the Onceler tries to market his Thneed, no one wants it, and the Onceler considers it a defeat, admitting to the Lorax that he was right all along. Before a crowd of people show up chanting about how amazing the Thneed is, Do they just appear from the horizon? He immediately forgets the lesson he just learned in favor of money, fame, and approval. So the Onceler's family shows up praising him. He claiming that all the ridicule throughout his life was for motivation. Family doesn't have the same hesitation as Onceler did when it comes to destroying the truffle trees. Eventually, they convince him to make a mass-cutting tree dominator, and to the disdain of the Lorax and the animals who live there. So now it's time for his token song where he becomes rich and famous. The negative effects of this are shown, but they don't really matter to the Onceler. He is happy and his company is only getting bigger until the last tree is cut down. And all the animals have gone away. Everything is sad and gloomy. Now, I don't expect you to remember much from the book. I didn't either. But something you may remember is the call to action at the end. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. In the book, that line is said via a cloud of blue smoke with the little boy looking at it. Since the characters aren't the point of the story, it feels like he's talking to you directly, the viewer. In contrast, in the movie, it's said from the Onceler to Ted as he gets the last truffle seed. It is no longer a call to action. It's a part of a dialogue. And he even tells, the Onceler even says, you need to plant it, Ted, showing that it's towards the character and not you. So, Ted says that no one cares about the trees anymore, and the Onceler says to make him care by planting in the seed in the middle of Sneedville where everyone can see it. Aggressive page turning. This would be great if it wasn't followed by them actually convincing the townspeople that trees are good without actually saying anything to prove it. So, they mention that photosynthesis makes air for free, and knock down the wall to show the citizens the barren wasteland around them, and that just convinces them? These people have no reason to believe that these two kids who just caused property damage are telling the truth. The fact that everything around them is so bad is more reason to want to keep the status quo, which is something they repeatedly tell you not to do. And, okay, even after the town, except O'Hare, decides that trees are important, then what about the viewer? We never need to worry about an air-shelling gremlin, or at least this movie has never given us reason to think otherwise. Filling air is a concept so out there that no one would believe it. It's completely unrealistic. Everything seen as bad in this movie is either done for some kind of sympathetic reason, or it's so far removed from reality that no one who doesn't already agree could ever take it seriously. You know what? Emphasis on that last bit. They provide excuses for everything done in the movie, by either making it someone else's fault or by making it completely crazy. So that begs the question, well, marketing to kids and adults, what are they trying to teach us? That greed is a slippery slope? Well, no. The parents are to blame. He became greedy, but it's not really his fault, especially since he actually regrets it at the end. And he never really wanted to do it in the first place. But then is the message to plant a tree? That's what they said in the song Let It Grow, and it could even be taken as speaking to the audience. Well, no, because they don't give us as the viewers any real reason to believe that trees are important. I of course personally believe that trees are important, but this movie says so many mixed messages with the moral of the story to get the tree message across throughout all of it. And even with this, DreamWorks needs the illusion of a message to sell their movie and to persuade their audience. I think they had one when starting the movie. After all, it's an adaptation of the book, and that book is very direct in what it says. So, what happened here? How did this movie, despite being an adaptation of the book, become so unclear? So, the beta versions of the song are available via YouTube. In contrast to the goofy, catchy tune that is How Bad Can I Be, this demo version, titled Biggering, has an intense tune with cool guitar. It lists different frivolous things that the Onceler needs to be bigger with an ominous choir repeating him in the background. To prove my point, here's a verse spoken by the Lorax. Hey, listen up, meathead. I'm going to say this once and I'm not going to repeat it. Greed, see, it's like a little pet, alright? And the more that you can feed it, the more hungry it'll get. But you know, you can't really blame greed. No, that's stupid. You see, it's got a worm inside. Aw, yeah, that's right. But the more you try to find it, the more it likes to hide. Listen, that is a nasty little worm. I like to call it pride. It sounds like amateur slam poetry, but you can't deny that it has a strong message about greed and pride. It knows what it's trying to say and goes right for the throat. No mixed messages and no backpedaling. This also applies to the early version of Enchanted, the first song in the movie. In the song, a phrase repeated by Ted is, "Because all I ever wanted in my life is the stuff that I don't have." That concept isn't even addressed in the final version at all. So I've set up a video comparison between the modern and beta versions of these two songs. Let's take a look, shall we?
I'm just saying how bad
Jesus fucking Christ.
can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? I'm just following my destiny. How bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? How bad can I possibly be? A company's an animal that's trying to survive. It's struggling and fighting just to keep itself alive. It's new, it's a brand new dawn with brand new cars and houses and lawns. You and me got all that we need. It's new, it's a brand new day. Can't see the sun, but we like it that way. Here in Kent, more than we need, Phil.
So, I am at least hoping that you can see some difference between the tunes of the two, or at least the message of the two. So, the demo versions display what the movie was going to be about before some kinds of changes were made. And it's only natural to assume that some of these things had to be changed because of the target audience. That's kids. Having a scary green man screaming about companies at the age of 6 is terrifying, but having a funny green man singing about funny things is actually funny. So, on another note, this movie is made by DreamWorks. DreamWorks is a very big company. They cannot afford to make anyone or themselves look bad. They can't afford to lose profits. So, the solution. Dull down the message to the point where it feels like you're making a statement, but you aren't. So, from everything we've gathered here, here's the thought process that I've referred to accomplish this. First things first, remove all accountability from the Onceler, the antagonist from the book. Make it so his parents pressure him into doing it, give him a silly face and personality so people can sympathize with him. At the end of the movie, let him reconcile with the Lorax, because he can't be evil. People will be mad if he is. But then, who will be the main antagonist? We need to make a different character. Make another capitalist. His personality traits can be greed. Whatever he's doing, it has to sound so ridiculous that no one could ever see it as something to take seriously. Maybe the character had more to him in early stages of development. Maybe not. Whatever happened in the middle, it resulted in Aloysius O'Hare, the man who learned to sell air. I will take questions at the end, don't worry. So, speaking of the main character, who could he be? The unnamed boy never needed a purpose for visiting the Onceler in the book, but with the movie now he does. He can't have too many extreme qualities or beliefs because he needs to be kid appropriate and something that the people can project onto. He also needs to learn a lesson. He can't be going to the Onceler because he simply cares about the trees. No, are you crazy? We should give him a love interest. A ditzy redhead for the main character Ted to impress by giving her a tree. Does he really learn the lesson of why trees are important? Debatable, but let's act like he did. So, we've got all this. Remember how we started with the Onceler Fandom? Me neither, but then in that case, why did this lead to such a wild reaction? So, to answer this, I'll need the help of Tumblr historian Sarah Z, who was a part of the Onceler Fandom herself. The thing about Sarah Z is that she speaks purely in pop culture references. So I'll need you to
My job
deal
is
with
to
me
make
there
college
and ignore
easy
that bit.
because students have a lot to
Best
do.
part of Tumblr.
But besides the fact that it was just a weird, bad movie, all these conditions made The Onceler ripe to be a Tumblr fan favorite for a few reasons. 2012 was the epitome of a lot of fandoms now considered pretty cringy. Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock were all at their height, as well as media like Homestuck. And a lot of things all this stuff had in common was hot boy villains. I myself became an Andrew Scott stan long before Fleabag because he played a hot boy villain in Sherlock. So to the eyes of teen girls on 2012 Tumblr, we had on our hands a hot boy villain. Not only that, but he wasn't so evil after all. He was sensitive, played music, and liked marshmallows, clearly regretted his bad actions, and seemed to have good intentions all along. He was so sad after destroying the whole entire Earth. Don't you just want to give him a hug? So we get a hot boy redeemable villain. I mean, he wasn't a good hot boy redeemable villain. We don't have a Zuko on our hands here or anything. But he was new and easy to feel sorry for, while also tapping into that part of people's interest that like sexy, darker characters without really having to justify anything too horrible, since the Onceler was obviously just pressured into his villainy. So that alone is a pretty strong foundation for this animated beanpole to be a fan favorite among teen circles on Tumblr. As I said earlier, I myself was a Onceler fan at the time, mostly because of that same combination of finding him cute, feeling bad for him, and generally liking villains because villains are hot.
I'm going to pause that one there. So, all the poor writing choices that led up to this reaction leave things completely up to the viewer, and in the end, make those people get so desperate that they make entirely new storylines for him, hence the AUs, or alternate universes, that I mentioned earlier. So, this would have never been an issue if the original story had a purpose. So, to tie this all together, let's look at the essential question again. To be responsible producers of media, we need to keep our intentions in mind. Too many bad writing decisions lead to bad interpretations from the audience. To be responsible consumers, we need to examine why things came to be and not look at them surface level, like so many people did with this movie. Depending on what perspective you went into this with, you'll go away with completely different reactions, or messages that you get from the movie. So if you went into this as a 10 to 16-year-old girl in 2012, you could walk away with a slightly concerning message. So every piece of media is made with reason behind it or something to persuade us towards, and it's our job to look past nonsense. We have to learn from mistakes like these. But maybe you've heard all this and disagree. Maybe you think The Onceler 2012 is the best movie to ever exist. And in that case, I can't stop you. You can think that. After all, how bad could it possibly be? And now I've got sources. Too many sources. Too many sources. And I'll take questions now if you would like. All right, Karis.
Do you think there could have been like an actual Lorax movie that didn't turn out like that?
The thing is, there kind of is. There was a animated, like pencil animated, not CGI movie that was made in like 1990 something. I didn't remember the exact date, but it was pretty much a direct representation of the book. It took the same amount of time that it did to read the book, and it didn't show the Onceler anything that he wasn't. And that was completely ignored because people didn't care about it, but it did its job. And at the end of the day, that would be a completely different discussion, but there absolutely can be, and there was. So it's not impossible. They just did a really, really bad job.
What was your motive behind doing the Onceler for your exhibition?
Good question. When I got into a media literacy class with my beloved Chiefin, it made it so that I already had an interest in this type of thing. Tumblr history and fandom history are two of my biggest interests, and so I wanted to incorporate those into my exhibition if I could. The Onceler fandom has always been something that I've been interested in because it's just so incredibly crazy that you're just like, what is this and why did this happen? And I went on to some blogs from 2012 where the cursor was a barbaloot. It was wild. But all of this meant that I could combine these two things and look deeper into the Lorax and the Onceler fandom, and it would still be relevant. So that's exactly what I did.
This is like a really, really, really strange question.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Okay,
Can't do worse than that.
this is where my mind went. So, do you think that it's possible for Ted's grandma and the Onceler to have like a old romance? Because, hear me out. The grandma knows so much. Like she's like knows where to find him and like what to get to him. Like, do you think there's some like connection there?
People tried. It was a small push from the fandom, but people who had any sense of like any common sense realized that this was very strange, and they didn't want to do the shipping the Lorax himself with the Onceler, which for the record, that part of the fandom is the only one that survived until now. People shipping the Lorax with the Onceler. People still care about this, but they definitely did try. And the Onceler and the Aunt Grandma and the present part of the movie are both old, so it made some vague sense. It could happen, but people didn't care. They just wanted to make it gay, and I don't blame them for that part. So, all right, Dory again.
Sorry, did you actually watch the Lorax for this?
5 times, yes. And they were definitely all legally, you know, I have Netflix, but it doesn't let me screen record, so I definitely didn't go on 123 Movies the whole time and go from there, and that's why all the clips are so low quality. Not at all, not at all.
Wink, wink.
No piracy here.
Totally, it's absolutely horrible to do piracy. Wink, wink.
So, anyone else? If not, I'll turn it to Cheethan, I believe.
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple questions.
Absolutely, go ham.
Can you, right, so in your exhibition, right, there's like 21 different key questions we talked about, right?
Yes.
So I want, for the benefit of your audience, what are the key, like not list them all, but just like, as a concept, what are these key questions? Why do we ask them? And what I need to know from you is, which of those 5 did you address in here?
Fun fact, I wrote all of that down in the script. So pretty much what we learned in our media literacy class is how to analyze a piece of media and what media is, for example. And so we got a list of different questions to ask about the things that we see. It went from who is paying for this, who made this, to who would benefit from this, to what methods did they use, etc. I don't remember all of them because there were like 20 of them, and I have the memory of a goldfish, but that's the basic gist of it, and that's what we spent a lot of our time in the class doing. We, in fact, analyzed the Lorax and a parody of the Lorax, the Truax, as the books in the class. They were both not great, but either way, that's one of the things that inspired me to do this. And so, for the questions that I used, so the first 2 were how did they communicate the message and what methods were used, which is pretty much the fact that they used bright colors and rhyming words for the kids, and the message for the parents, or the message in quotation marks, as well as this whole thought process that I've displayed up here at one point. Ignore the communists. But, alright, so let me go to the other part. I've also got who was making this and who was the target audience on there, and how might people interpret this message differently. You said we needed to answer 5, and so I chose 5 out of the few that I think I could answer in this presentation, and I've got them written down here, so yay.
Yeah, and actually I'll just remind you and Ryan real quickly because it matters. Make sure when you're done with your presentation, this evening, whatever, share those notes with me.
Already
share
did.
the slideshow with me. I assume you already did, but just make sure that you have the up-to-date version because I know you all hit submit before. Make sure I have the most up-to-date stuff.
All right.
Otherwise, no more questions for Stellar, folks?
I have a question. Can I just get a picture of that one slide?
Absolutely.
Just that one. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have to save it for the rest of my life.
All right, well done.
You're doing all
Thank
right.
you. You are never going to be able to get that concept out of your brain.
Nope.
You're welcome.
I will never review.
All right, y'all done with your pictures?
Okay, I got it.
All right.